They say the night keeps its own secrets, but sometimes it delivers them right to your door. It was one of those Oregon nights that felt alive, rain clawing at the roof, wind groaning through the trees, and the kind of darkness that makes you believe in things you can't explain. Inside a lonely farmhouse on the edge of nowhere, Emily Carter wrapped her cardigan tighter and stared at the empty mug in her hands. The clock ticked past midnight. Another sleepless night. Another storm that sounded too much like the one from a year ago, the night her brother's truck never made it home. She told herself she was fine, that the silence was comforting. But when the knock came, 3 sharp raps, urgent and uneven, it cut through her chest like a blade. No one visited her this late. Not out here. Her dog lifted its head, ears stiff, a low growl rumbling in its throat. Emily's fingers tightened around the flashlight, heart hammering as she moved toward the door. The wind pushed against it, moaning like something alive. "Who's there?" she called. The voice that answered was rough, broken. "Please. I just need milk." Milk? The word felt absurd, disarming. She hesitated, then unlatched the door, and the storm nearly took it off its hinges. There he stood. A man, broad-shouldered, soaked to the bone, one arm cradling a shivering wolf pup wrapped in a torn flannel. His eyes met hers, pleading but steady. "I'm sorry," he said, voice hoarse. "He's hungry. I didn't know where else to go." Emily blinked at him, flashlight trembling slightly. "That's a wolf." "Not yet," he said softly. Something in the way he said it made her chest tighten. The pup whimpered, nose pressed to the man's chest, too weak to lift its head. Emily's instinct, the part that still believed she could save anything small and broken, kicked in. "Come in before you both freeze," she murmured. He stepped inside, dripping rain onto the worn wooden floor. Up close, he smelled faintly of pine and something wilder. His hands shook as he handed her the pup. "I'll get the milk," she said, moving toward the kitchen. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. When the light hit his sleeve, she saw blood, dark and fresh, soaking through the fabric. She reached for the first aid kit on the counter, her mind buzzing with questions. Who walks through a storm with a half-dead animal? As she poured milk into a bowl, she caught a glimpse of him through the reflection in the window. He was watching her, not just watching, studying, as if memorizing the shape of her movements. When she turned, his gaze dropped instantly. But not before she saw it. A flash of gold beneath the brown, like a light flickering behind his pupils. She froze. The storm howled louder. "What happened to your arm?" she asked carefully. "An accident," he said, though the word felt rehearsed. "I'll be gone by morning." She knelt beside the pup, helping it drink. Its tiny heartbeat thrummed against her palm. "He's beautiful. What's his name?" "Scout," he murmured, almost as if the name itself carried weight. For a while, neither spoke. Only the sound of rain and the gentle lapping of milk filled the air. When Emily looked up, the man's face had softened, tired eyes, a small scar across his cheek, and a sadness she recognized too well. "You live alone?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Just me. And now, apparently you too." A faint smile touched his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you. Not many people would open their door for a stranger at this hour." "I guess I'm not many people," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. The lights flickered. The pup whimpered again. Somewhere beyond the farmhouse, a low, mournful howl rolled through the forest, so deep it vibrated in her chest. The man went rigid. Emily looked toward the window. "Coyotes?" He shook his head slowly. "No. Not coyotes." Something primal moved in his expression, protective, alert. For a moment his eyes flashed that strange golden hue again, brighter this time, before dimming like a candle snuffed out. Emily blinked, unsure if she'd imagined it. The storm swallowed the silence between them. When she finally spoke, her voice was a whisper. "Who are you?" He hesitated, jaw tightening. "Just someone passing through." And with that, he turned toward the door, rain still pouring outside. But before he stepped out, he looked back. "Lock your doors tonight," he said quietly, "and keep the lights low." Then he was gone. Emily stood there for a long moment, the echo of his warning threading through her pulse. She turned back to the little pup, who had finished drinking and now stared up at her with wide, silver eyes that glowed faintly under the kitchen light. A chill crawled down her spine. Somewhere in the distance, the same howl rose again. Closer this time, sharper, desperate. The farmhouse felt smaller, the storm louder, the darkness outside hungrier. Emily reached over, switched off the light, and whispered to herself, "What the hell just walked into my life?" The wind answered with a scream. And that was the night everything changed. If you're still listening, don't go anywhere. This story's only just begun. Go ahead, subscribe now, because what's coming next will make you question what's human, and what's waiting just beyond your door. The storm passed, but the world it left behind felt different. Morning light spilled through the window, pale and cold, pooling over the floor where the wolf pup, Scout, slept curled beside Emily's boots. His tiny body rose and fell, peaceful, as if the chaos of the night had never happened. But outside, the fields were too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel safe. Emily stepped onto the porch, mug of coffee warming her hands, and drew in the scent of wet earth and cedar. The rain had washed everything clean except the air. It still carried a thickness, a charge, like the aftermath of lightning that hasn't finished its strike. She saw it then. Prints. Deep, distinct, trailing from the barn toward the tree line. Too large for any dog. Too deliberate for a deer. The ground around them was torn as if something heavy had run on 2 legs, and 4. Her stomach twisted. She told herself he was probably gone, back to wherever strangers with gold eyes belong. But when she found the bandage, blood-stained and discarded by the barn door, her hands went numb. The blood was fresh. Scout yipped from the porch, tail low, nose twitching toward the woods. Emily crouched beside him, fingers brushing through his soft gray fur. "You miss him too, huh?" she whispered. The pup pressed against her palm, trembling. Something in him, some instinct older than his small frame, was afraid. Sheriff Mason Green climbed out, hat pulled low, the lines on his face carved by years of secrets he didn't talk about. "Morning, Emily," he said, glancing toward the barn. "Heard about some disturbances near this side of town. Figured I'd check in." She tried to sound casual. "Disturbances?" "Couple livestock attacks up near Ridge Hollow. Animals torn open. Not like anything I've seen. Folks are spooked." His gaze drifted toward the paw prints by her barn. "You notice anything strange out here?" Emily's throat tightened. The image of Luke's eyes flashed through her mind. That faint gold shimmer. That warning, "Lock your doors." She forced a small shake of her head. Just the storm. Knocked over some fencing. Mason studied her for a moment, the way only small-town sheriffs can, half suspicion, half concern. "If you see anything or anyone, you call me. People say it's wild animals, but..." He stopped himself. "Well, something about those wounds doesn't fit. Too clean. Too precise." He tipped his hat, leaving her with the weight of unfinished sentences. By dusk, the sky had turned violet, clouds drifting like smoke over the forest ridge. Scout refused to go near the barn, whining until Emily carried him back inside. She tried to lose herself in the rhythm of feeding him, cleaning up, pretending life was normal. But every creak of the house made her flinch. When night came, it came fast. The woods pressed against her windows, black and restless. She locked every door, every window, but still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Scout paced the floor, ears pricked, growling at something unseen. Not thunder. Not the wind. A thud against the back porch. Heavy. Human. Emily's heart lurched. She grabbed the flashlight and edged toward the door. Through the rain-smeared glass, a figure slumped against the railing. Luke. She opened the door before fear could stop her. He was there, barefoot, half-naked, mud and blood streaked across his skin, chest rising in shallow gasps. His body trembled with exhaustion, every muscle pulled tight like wire. "Close the door," he rasped. "Please." She dragged him inside, locking it behind him. Scout whimpered and darted forward, licking at his hand. "God, Luke, what happened?" His eyes met hers, fever-bright, wild. "You can't tell anyone I was here." She pulled a blanket from the couch, wrapping it around his shoulders. "You're hurt again." "It's not my blood." That stopped her cold. He leaned back, the light catching on his face, revealing scratches that looked more like claws than cuts. "They're hunting," he whispered. "They've crossed into your land." "Who?" Luke's jaw clenched. "Not who. What?" He tried to stand, staggered, caught himself on the wall. Emily reached for him, and in that moment her hand brushed his chest, heat pulsing beneath his skin, heart pounding faster than any human's. "I told you to lock your doors," he said, voice low, rough. "You didn't listen." "I did," she shot back. "But apparently, the doors don't stop whatever you are." Silence. Only the rain, and Scout's small whine between them. Luke's expression softened, grief flickering beneath the anger. "I never meant to bring this here." "Then tell me what's happening," she said, stepping closer. "What's out there?" His eyes lifted to hers, and again that faint gold shimmer flared behind his pupils, glowing through the dim kitchen light. "The ones who killed my brother," he said. "The ones who won't stop until they find me." A chill sank into her bones. He turned toward the window, muscles taut, senses alive. "If they smell me here, they'll come for you too." "Then we leave," she whispered. "Right now." He shook his head. "It's too late. They're already watching." Outside, something moved between the trees, a shadow slipping through shadow, fast and silent. The night itself seemed to breathe heavier. Luke stepped in front of her, body shifting, energy rippling under his skin like heat through metal. For a heartbeat she saw it, his outline blurring, bones straining beneath flesh, the air thick with an animal power pressing to break free. Emily stumbled back, hand over her mouth. "Luke." He forced it down, breath ragged, voice hoarse. "Don't be afraid of me. Be afraid of them." The sound came again, closer this time. A low growl rolled through the trees, followed by another and another, until the woods outside pulsed with the sound of teeth and fury. Luke's eyes glowed fully now, gold and burning. "Get away from the window," he ordered. Scout barked, high and frantic. The air trembled with the weight of something massive circling the farmhouse. Emily's mind raced. Sheriff Mason's words echoed in her head, too clean, too precise. She reached for the flashlight again, but Luke grabbed her wrist gently, steady but firm. "No lights," he whispered. "They hunt the glow." The room fell into shadow. Only the rain tapping the glass, the thunder distant, the sound of her heartbeat filling her ears. Outside, the howls rose higher, overlapping in a chorus that made the world itself seem to bow beneath it. Emily held her breath. Scout whimpered against her leg. Luke didn't move, his eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the window, his body coiled like a storm about to break. And in that terrible stillness, she understood something she hadn't the night before. Whatever Luke Hale was, man, monster, or something in between, He wasn't the danger she needed to fear. He was the only thing standing between her and it. The shadows pressed closer. The woods whispered. The first scream came from the direction of the ridge, high, human, and cut off too soon. Emily's pulse pounded in her throat. Luke's voice came low, steady, and final. "They found us." The scream faded into the night, swallowed by the forest. For a moment there was nothing. No wind, no rain, only silence so deep it felt like the world was holding its breath. Emily gripped the edge of the counter, fighting to steady her hands. Luke was already moving, barefoot, body tense, every motion a blur of instinct. "Stay inside," he said, voice low, almost not human. "Don't open that door for anyone." Luke, wait. But he was gone before the sentence found its end, slipping into the dark like the shadows had opened to take him back. The door slammed against the storm, and the house felt suddenly empty, hollowed out by fear. Scout whined, pawing at the door. Emily's chest ached at the sound. She waited, 5 minutes, 10, but the howls outside only grew louder, a call and answer that seemed to shake the trees themselves. Something in her, some reckless thread of loyalty, snapped. She grabbed her coat and the flashlight, scooped Scout into her arms, and stepped into the night. The woods loomed, thick and black. Every breath she took came out in clouds. Branches clawed her sleeves, wet leaves plastered her jeans. The path ahead was nothing but darkness. She followed the sound, low growls, muffled snarls, and the unmistakable echo of something human breaking apart. "Luke," she called softly. "Luke, please." The world answered with movement. Shadows flickered between the trees, fast, impossible to follow. Scout whimpered, pressing closer to her chest. Emily's light caught a flash of silver fur, then vanished. Her pulse thundered. Then she saw him. At first, she thought it was 2 wolves locked in a brutal fight, one dark, one pale. But then the pale one lifted its head, and she saw its eyes. "Luke." The name trembled off her lips just as the light struck his face. His body twisted, muscle and bone shifting under skin, a sound like fabric tearing as the change overtook him. His back arched, hands clawing at the ground as his shape warped between man and beast. The air thickened with heat and fury, the smell of rain and wild earth. Emily froze, unable to breathe. What she was seeing couldn't be real. Couldn't exist outside nightmare. When he rose again, he wasn't the man who'd stood on her porch. His skin rippled with dark fur, shoulders broad, eyes blazing gold through the night. A growl rolled from his chest, a sound that didn't belong in this world. The other wolf lunged. Luke met it midair, the impact echoing through the forest. Claws flashed, teeth snapped. Emily stumbled backward, flashlight clattering to the ground. Scout barked frantically. The fight was savage, a blur of motion and sound, and when it ended, the dark wolf lay broken among the roots. Luke turned toward her. Blood streaked his jaw. His chest heaved with breath. For a long, terrible moment, the forest held them in silence, the beast and the woman who should have run. Then his gaze softened. He stepped closer, each movement deliberate, as if afraid to frighten her further. "Emily," he said, voice raw, distorted by what remained of his transformation. "You shouldn't have followed me." She stumbled back, shaking her head. "What are you?" His body shuddered, shifting, fur retreating, bones resetting with quiet snaps. When he fell to his knees, he was human again, bare skin streaked with mud and blood, eyes downcast. "I tried to protect you from this," he said. "From me." Emily's breath came shallow. "You're a werewolf." "Yes," he whispered. "But that's not all." He looked up then, and for the first time she saw the weight behind his eyes. Not just sorrow, but responsibility. "I'm the Alpha King," he said quietly. "The leader of a pack most of this world has forgotten. The rogues you heard tonight, they're hunting me. They killed my brother. And Scout," he gestured toward the pup, who now pressed himself between them. "He's my nephew. The last of my bloodline." The forest seemed to tilt. Emily knelt, hand trembling as she reached for the pup. "So when you said they'd come for you, I meant they'd come for anyone near me." She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all she could do was stare. The man she'd pitied, the stranger she'd fed, was something out of an old story, something impossible. Yet the fear she expected never came the way she thought it would. What she felt instead was confusion tangled with something deeper. Pity, awe, the faint pulse of connection that had started the moment he'd knocked on her door. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why here?" Luke's expression faltered. "Because I didn't trust anyone else. You helped Scout. You didn't ask for anything. You opened your door when you should have run." A sound broke the silence, distant, soft, like the rustle of feet through leaves. Luke's head snapped toward it. His voice turned sharp. "We need to move." He grabbed her hand, pulling her into motion. The forest closed around them, shadows shifting as the moon broke through clouds. Every branch, every breath of wind carried threat. Emily could hear the blood pounding in her ears. They stopped at a clearing, moonlight spilling silver across the wet grass. Luke released her hand and turned toward the sky. The change rippled through him again, smoother this time, less violent, bones flowing beneath skin like water. His body rose into the light, fur glinting. He looked back at her, half man, half wolf, eyes burning gold. "No matter what you see," he said, his voice layered with growl and grief, "don't be afraid." But she was. Not just of him, but of herself, for not running, for wanting to understand, for the strange pull in her chest that whispered he's still the man who knocked on your door. The night erupted around them, branches cracking, shapes darting between the trees. The rogues were back, more of them this time. Luke roared, a sound that shook the air, and charged. Emily dropped to the ground, clutching Scout. Flashes of movement filled the clearing, fangs, claws, fur, the sickening thud of bodies colliding. The moon painted everything in silver and shadow. When it ended, Luke stood over the last rogue, chest heaving. The others scattered into the dark. Blood ran down his arm, but his eyes stayed on her. Slowly, carefully, he shifted back to human. Emily rose, still shaking. "You saved me." He looked at her as if the words hurt. "I should never have brought this to your doorstep." "But you did," she said softly. "And now I know." Luke stepped closer, hesitated. "Knowing means danger. You understand that?" She nodded, though her heart screamed otherwise. "Then tell me everything." He studied her face for a long time, as if searching for the fear she should have shown. "The pack's been broken," he said finally. "Scattered since the rogues turned. They want the crown, the bloodline, the power that comes with it. Scout is the heir. If they find him—" "They won't," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. Something unreadable passed across his face. Gratitude, maybe, or guilt. He reached out, brushing his fingers against her wrist. The touch was barely there, but it set her pulse racing. "You should hate me for what I am." She looked at him, at the man, the monster, the protector, and whispered, "Maybe I should. But I don't." The wind stirred the trees, carrying with it the faintest echo of another howl, distant and hungry. Luke turned toward the sound, shoulders straightening. "This isn't over," he said. Emily drew Scout closer, feeling the small heartbeat against her palm. "Then I guess neither of us is running." The moonlight bled through the branches, painting them both in pale fire. Somewhere beyond the ridge, danger waited, But for now, there was only the quiet between them, the fragile pause before the next storm. And in that fragile pause, Emily Carter realized her life had already crossed a line she could never step back over. The forest never really went quiet after that night. Even when the wind stopped, the silence carried a pulse, an echo of everything Emily had seen. Fur turning to flesh, blood on moonlight, the sound of Luke's voice when he'd said you shouldn't have followed me. By the time dawn crept through the trees, she was exhausted but wired, her thoughts circling the same impossible truth. The man in her kitchen wasn't just a man. Now he sat shirtless at her table, the lines of his shoulders cut with scratches that were already half-healed. Steam rose from a mug of coffee beside him. He looked too still for someone human. Emily dipped a cloth in warm water, kneeling beside him. "Hold still," she murmured. He gave a small, crooked smile. "You're saying that to the wrong species. Even wolves need stitches," she said, trying to steady her hand. Her voice betrayed her. It shook when she got too close. The air between them was warm from the fire, thick with the scent of pine, soap, and something wild that was entirely him. When the cloth brushed his skin, he flinched. Not from pain. From restraint. She could feel it, his body tense under her touch, his breath shallow. For a heartbeat their eyes met, hers uncertain, his dark and steady. "You're healing too fast," she said quietly. He looked away. "It's part of what I am. Hurts the same though." "Then why risk it?" she asked. "Why keep protecting me? You could have left." Luke's jaw flexed. Because once a wolf chooses his pack, he doesn't walk away. Even if it's just one stubborn human and a pup that chews her boots. Her laugh came out softer than she meant it to, trembling around the edges. She tied the bandage, fingers brushing his skin again. The contact sent a spark up her arm she didn't expect. He must have felt it too. His hand came up, stopping hers gently. "Emily," he said, voice low, almost reverent. "You should keep your distance. The closer you are to me, the more danger finds you." "Too late," she whispered. For a long moment, they didn't move. The world outside the window glowed with the thin gold of morning, the kind of light that made everything look temporary. Scout broke it first, barking from the porch. Emily stood, stepping away. The space she left behind seemed to echo between them. That afternoon, she drove into town to pick up supplies, milk, bandages, whatever excuses she could find to clear her head. Her best friend, Tessa, worked the counter at the small grocery. Normally, Tessa's voice was all sunshine and gossip, but today it was off, flat, almost distant. "Hey, she said, not looking up right away. "Haven't seen you in a while. Everything okay out there on that farm?" "Yeah," Emily lied, placing the milk on the counter. "Just the usual. Storm damage." Tessa finally lifted her eyes. For a split second they looked wrong. Not the usual hazel, but darker, almost silver. Emily blinked. "You okay?" "Fine," Tessa said too quickly. Then her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Be careful driving home. Weird things have been happening near the ridge. Animals, maybe. Or people pretending to be." Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. People pretending? Tessa just tilted her head. "You never really know what's human anymore, do you?" Then she laughed, a short, sharp sound that wasn't hers, and turned away. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every shadow between the trees looked alive. When she pulled into the drive, Luke was already outside, sharpening a piece of metal into something that wasn't quite a blade. "You shouldn't go into town alone," he said without looking up. "I needed supplies." He set the blade down and finally met her gaze. "Someone followed you back." Her stomach dropped. "What?" He nodded toward the tree line. "They're not close. But they're watching. I can smell them." That night, she tried to sleep, but the house wouldn't settle. Every board creaked like a whisper. She turned once, twice, then finally gave up and stared at the ceiling. Scout stirred at the foot of the bed, ears twitching. Then a sound, soft, deliberate, against the window pane. Emily sat up, breath caught. Outside, the night was still except for the wind. And then she saw them, two faint points of light, hovering just beyond the glass. Eyes. Glowing amber, unblinking. Her pulse jumped. She reached for the phone, then froze. The eyes vanished. The next second, Luke was at her door, already half-shifted, gold in his gaze. "I told you they'd come," he said. "Luke, my friend, Tessa, something's wrong with her. Her eyes." "I know," he said grimly. "They've marked her. The rogues use humans now, vessels for their scent. It means they're closing in." Emily pressed a hand to her mouth. "What do we do?" He stepped closer, the air between them charged. "We protect the pup. We protect you. No matter what law I break for it." "You'd break your pack's laws for me?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. Luke's hand came up, fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I already have." The gesture was small, but it held the weight of everything unsaid, the night spent on opposite sides of fear, the strange pull between danger and something like trust. His touch lingered a heartbeat too long, warm and human against the cold storm pressing at the windows. Outside, a howl cut through the night, low, drawn, filled with promise and threat. Luke's expression hardened. "Stay close to me," he murmured. "I wasn't planning to do anything else." Scout barked once, sharp and defiant, as if agreeing. The sound almost made her smile. Almost. Luke moved toward the window, watching the tree lean with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. "They're testing boundaries," he said. "They want to see if I'll break cover." Emily reached out, her fingers finding his arm. "And will you?" He looked down at her hand, then back to her face. "For you," he said quietly, "I already have." The wind rose, rattling the panes, carrying with it the scent of rain and the faint iron tang of blood somewhere too close. Scout whimpered. Luke stayed at the window, every muscle ready. Emily stood beside him, her fear and his strength merging into something wordless, something neither of them could name yet. Outside, the rogues waited. Inside, two heartbeats fell into the same rhythm. And somewhere in that fragile, dangerous stillness, trust began to taste like the start of love. Morning came red. Not the soft pink of a peaceful dawn, but the kind that stains the clouds like a warning. Emily woke to that light spilling across the floorboards, painting everything in uneasy color. Luke was gone. Scout was curled near the door, asleep but restless, paws twitching as if running through dreams he couldn't escape. The air in the farmhouse felt heavier. She could sense it, the change. Something had shifted in the woods. When she stepped outside, she saw them. 3 men by the fence line. They didn't move like normal men. Their stillness was too controlled, their eyes too bright. Luke stood a few feet from them, bare-armed, shoulders squared, the morning steam rising from his skin. One of the strangers stepped forward. He was taller than Luke, leaner, with a sharp face and a voice that cut clean through the quiet. "Alpha." Luke didn't answer right away. Emily stopped a few paces behind him, trying to read the tension in the air. "Carter," Luke said finally. "You shouldn't have come here." The man, Carter Voss, smiled without warmth. "You left us no choice. The rogues have crossed the border. The council's in uproar. They say you've gone rogue yourself." Luke's jaw tightened. "You know that isn't true." "What I know," Carter said, taking another slow step, "is that you've broken more laws in the last week than most alphas manage in a lifetime. You've exposed us to humans." His gaze slid toward Emily. Cold. Assessing. To her. Emily felt the weight of it like claws on skin. She straightened, refusing to shrink. "She's under my protection," Luke said. Carter's tone was almost gentle. "Then you've already made your choice." The other wolves shifted behind him, silent enforcers. Luke's whole body went taut, the muscles in his arms corded with the effort not to fight. "You came here to bring me back?" he said. "I came to remind you who you are," Carter replied. "Before you forget." Scout barked suddenly from the porch, the sound sharp enough to crack the moment. Carter's eyes flicked toward the pup. "So it's true," he murmured. "You're hiding the heir." Luke moved before Emily could blink. One step, one growl, his voice pure warning. "You will not touch him." For a heartbeat, everything held still. Then Carter lifted his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, Elf. I'm not the enemy." His tone darkened. "But the rogues won't hesitate. And if they find out what you've done here, they'll come for all of you. Including her." He turned his head just enough for Emily to catch the faintest whisper that wasn't meant for her. "If she gets in the way, we'll deal with it." The words hit like a blade. She saw Luke's expression change, barely a flicker, but enough to know he'd heard it too. When Carter finally left, disappearing into the tree line with his silent shadows, the quiet that followed felt worse than the confrontation. Luke stood there, fists clenched, eyes on the ground. "Luke," she said softly. He looked up, and for the first time, she saw something in him that wasn't strength. It was exhaustion. "They think I've lost control," he said. "That I've gone soft. Because of me?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Later, inside, he tried to explain. About the Packlands, the Council, the laws that kept humans and wolves apart. Each word sounded heavier coming from him, as if speaking them out loud made the cage real again. Emily listened, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee gone cold. "And what happens if you don't go back?" she asked. "They'll name a new alpha. Carter, probably. He'll hunt me down and anyone with me." "Then you can't stay," she said, though the words tasted like ash. "I can't leave you," he replied simply. Something in the way he said it made her chest ache. No promises, no grand declarations, just quiet truth. He reached for her hand, rough palm against her skin. The moment stretched, warm and fragile. "Whatever happens," he said, "I'll keep you safe." That night, the sky turned the color of bruises. Emily couldn't sleep. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps outside, every creak like someone whispering her name. Luke paced the porch, a shadow moving against shadows. Sometime after midnight, she smelled smoke. It started faint, like a campfire. Then stronger. Acrid. "Luke," she shouted, running toward the back door. The air outside glowed orange, the barn engulfed in flames. He was already there, hauling open the gate, shouting for Scout. The pup's panicked barks cut through the roar of fire. Emily grabbed a blanket, pressing it to her mouth, trying to see through the smoke. "Scout!" Luke vanished into the blaze. The heat hit like a wall, sparks danced through the air, landing on her hair and jacket. The world narrowed to the sound of crackling wood and the beating of her own heart. When Luke emerged again, coughing, eyes streaming, his arms were empty. "Where is he?" she gasped. He didn't answer right away. He looked back at the barn, the roof collapsing, flames swallowing the last of the structure, and his silence said what his words couldn't. Emily shook her head, disbelief cutting deeper than fear. "No. No, he can't, he was just—" Luke caught her before she ran forward, pulling her against his chest. She fought him at first, fists against his shoulders, grief clawing through her throat. But when the barn gave one final groan and fell in on itself, she stopped. The fire painted everything in violent light. His arms around her were the only steady thing left. "This wasn't random," he said hoarsely. Someone wanted to send a message. Her tears blurred the fire into streaks of gold and red. Carter? I don't know. His voice broke on the words. But I swear to you, Emily, I'll find whoever did this. She wanted to believe him, wanted to drown in that certainty. But all she could think of was the tiny heartbeat she'd held against her chest, now swallowed by flame. Hours later, when the fire was only ash and smoke, Luke stood alone by the blackened ruin. Emily watched from the porch, arms wrapped around herself. The night around them felt hollow. She saw him lift something from the ground, a torn scrap of fabric, barely visible in the moonlight. He brought it to his nose, eyes narrowing. Then he turned toward the forest, every line of his body sharpening with purpose. Luke, she called. He didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. This scent, it's not Carter's. It's theirs. The rogues. Her breath caught. Then Scout? Alive, he said. They took him. Emily's knees nearly gave out. Relief and dread tangled together. Then we can get him back. Luke met her eyes, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw something in his expression that frightened her more than any beast could. Resolve. They want blood, he said softly. They'll have mine before they touch him again. The wind shifted, carrying the faintest echo of a howl from deep within the woods, long, triumphant, mocking. Emily stepped closer, gripping his arm. We'll find him, she said. We'll bring him home. Luke looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. His voice dropped to a whisper. You still call it home. I do, she said. The fire smoldered behind them, the last embers fading. The night pressed close, thick with betrayal and smoke and the promise of blood. And in that darkness, something in both of them hardened, the kind of bond forged not from trust or love alone, but from the shared taste of loss. The air changed before the storm came. It carried a charge, metallic, sharp, as if the world itself was bracing for the first strike. Emily stood at the edge of the blackened barn, staring into the woods that had taken Scout. Luke hadn't slept since the fire. Every few minutes his head would tilt, listening for sounds no human ear could catch. When Sheriff Mason Green's truck pulled up, tires crunching gravel, the dawn was a thin bruise across the sky. Emily expected disbelief or questions. Instead, Mason got out, jaw set, eyes already on Luke. So it's true, he said. You're one of them. Luke didn't flinch. You've known longer than you've admitted. Mason nodded once. Since the first livestock attacks. The prints weren't right. Neither were the wounds. I kept quiet, hoping the pack would handle its own. Guess that's out the window now. Emily exhaled, tension easing just enough to speak. Scout's still alive. The rogues took him. Mason's gaze softened for half a heartbeat when it shifted to her. Then let's bring him back. They didn't waste time. By noon, they were deep in the forest, moving under a sky thick with storm clouds. Luke tracked scent and sign, broken branches, blood dark on bark, his movements efficient, predatory, but laced with something raw, guilt. Ronan, Luke said quietly, he's behind this. He was banished years ago. He wants the pack, the throne, everything. Throne. Mason muttered, shaking his head. I miss the days when my biggest problem was a busted fence. The deeper they went, the stranger the forest became. The light dimmed though it wasn't yet evening, shadows shifting where none should. Emily felt it pressing in, the sense of being watched. And then she saw her. Tessa? Emily called. Her friend stood between two trees, rain beginning to streak down her face. She didn't move, didn't answer. Her eyes gleamed faintly silver even in the dim light. Luke stepped forward instantly. Emily, don't. But Emily was already running. Tess, it's me, she said, slowing as she reached her. You don't have to be afraid. We can help you. Tessa's lips parted in a smile that didn't belong to her. Help me. The voice that came out was layered, hers and another's. You can't even help yourself. The forest seemed to shudder around them. From the shadows behind Tessa, a shape stepped forward, taller than Luke, broader, movements too smooth to be human. His eyes burned a red gold that made the stormlight look pale. Ronan. Alpha Hale, he drawled, voice low and almost amused. Still playing house with humans, I see. Luke moved between them before Emily could blink. His whole body coiled with restrained fury. Let her go, Ronan. She came to me, Ronan said, brushing Tessa's shoulder. Humans are such easy doors to open. So willing to believe what they shouldn't. Tessa, fight him, Emily pleaded. Please, look at me. For a moment, the silver in Tessa's eyes flickered. Her fingers trembled. Then Ronan's hand brushed her neck, and she gasped, frozen again. Rain began to pour, hard and cold, drumming against the earth. Luke's voice turned to a growl. You've made your point. Release her. Ronan tilted his head. You used to understand what power means, Luke. Before you gave it away for a woman and a whelp that isn't even your own. Lightning split the sky. The scent of ozone and danger filled the air. Luke struck first. The impact was a blur, two shadows colliding, the sound of force meeting force. Emily stumbled back, the ground shaking beneath them. Mason pulled her toward cover, gun drawn though it looked useless against what they were watching. The fight was fast, almost invisible, flashes of movement, claws catching light, thunder answering every blow. Ronan was stronger than he should have been, his strength drawn from whatever dark thing had taken root inside him. Luke slammed him against a tree, the bark splintering. You won't touch her. Ronan laughed, blood on his teeth. I already have. He twisted free, driving Luke into the ground. The shock rolled through the forest, a deep, painful sound. Emily ran forward despite Mason's shout. Luke! Ronan turned, eyes locking onto her. For a heartbeat, everything slowed, the world narrowing to that stare. She felt it then, the pull of his power, cold and suffocating, like hands around her mind. He reached out. You could be more than his pet, Emily Carter. You could belong. She stumbled backward, fighting the haze closing in. I already do. Then a sound tore through the clearing, a gunshot, sharp and human. Ronan jerked sideways, snarling. Mason stood behind him, jaw set, smoke rising from his pistol. Get the hell away from her, the sheriff said. Ronan turned slowly, smile dark and thin. Brave. The storm exploded overhead. Luke surged up again, fury burning through exhaustion. He caught Ronan mid-turn, driving him back into the mud, every strike fueled by something primal and desperate. But it wasn't enough. Ronan caught Luke's arm, twisted, and threw him aside like a broken branch. His eyes flashed toward Emily. You want her safe? He hissed. Then learn what loss feels like. Before Luke could move, Ronan's hand snapped out, claws raking across Tessa's throat. The world stopped. Emily's scream tore through the storm. She caught her friend as she fell, blood and rain mixing in her hands. No, no, no. Tess, stay with me please. Tessa's lips moved, barely sound. Run. Then nothing. Luke froze where he stood, the rain plastering his hair to his face. The look in his eyes was pure devastation, an old, unbearable recognition of yet another thing he'd failed to save. Ronan stepped back, satisfied. Now you know, he said softly. Now you'll come for me. And before they could reach him, he was gone, vanishing into the storm as if swallowed by it. Emily knelt in the mud, Tessa's body in her arms, sobbing quietly against the roar of the rain. Mason stood nearby, helpless, his gun useless now. Luke moved closer, but stopped short, the distance between them full of everything that had just broken. "I was too late," he said, voice barely a whisper. Emily looked up at him, eyes red, voice raw. "Then don't be next time." The lightning cracked again, bright enough to turn the forest white. Luke's gaze lifted toward the dark horizon, where the rogues had vanished with Scout. The storm raged harder, wind howling through the trees. His voice, when it came, was low and certain. "This ends with blood," he said. "One way or another." Emily didn't argue. She only held her friend and stared into the forest, where the shadows moved like something alive. The hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun. The rain hadn't stopped for days. It came in sheets, washing the forest of blood but not of grief. Tessa was buried beneath the old oak near the ridge, where the wildflowers grew even in winter. Emily stood there until her legs trembled, until Luke's hand found her shoulder and she realized how cold she'd become. They said nothing on the walk back. There were no words that could stitch a wound that deep. By nightfall, the storm broke, but the silence it left behind was worse. Luke paced outside the farmhouse, every sense burning with the need to move, to fight, to do something. But Emily's stillness was louder than any battle cry. Inside, she sat by the fire, knees drawn to her chest. Scout was still gone. Tessa was gone. And somewhere in the darkness, Ronan waited, an open wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. When Luke finally stepped through the door, she didn't turn. He watched her for a moment, the firelight painting her skin gold and shadow. "You should rest," he said softly. "I can't," she whispered. "Every time I close my eyes, I see her." He came closer, kneeling beside her chair. "You couldn't have stopped it." Her gaze lifted, red-rimmed but fierce. "Neither could you." The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Something shifted between them then, not anger, not blame, but the quiet acknowledgement of shared pain. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers, hesitant as if afraid she'd pull away. She didn't. "I won't lose anyone else," he said. "You can't promise that." "I can," he said, voice rough. "Because I'd die before I let it happen." The words hung between them like the air before a lightning strike. Then outside, a sound. A crash. A snarl. Luke was on his feet instantly. Emily followed him to the porch. The woods beyond the fence shimmered faintly under the half-moon, too quiet. Then a shadow darted from the tree line, fast and low. "Another." "Rogues," Luke hissed. Before she could speak, they were on them. The first wolf hit the fence, splintering it like twigs. Luke shifted mid-stride, his body blurring into motion. A sound of tearing air, bones realigning, claws catching light. It wasn't horror anymore to Emily. It was him, all raw power and protection. He tore through the first rogue before it reached her, but the second was faster. It lunged from the side, catching her off guard. She fell back, the breath knocked from her lungs, the world spinning into noise and claws and teeth. She screamed his name. Luke turned too late. The rogue's claws raked her shoulder, blood blooming through her shirt. He ripped it away, but she was already falling. "Emily!" He caught her before she hit the ground, his chest heaving, her blood warm against his hands. The scent of it hit him like fire. Something ancient inside him roared to life, deeper than instinct, older than the pack. "Stay with me," he growled, but her eyes were already fluttering shut. Her pulse faltered once, twice, then faded. And in that hollow second, Luke Hale, Alpha King, did the one thing his kind had sworn never to do. He bent close, his breath shaking, his wolf rising behind his ribs like a storm barely contained. His teeth grazed her skin, just below her collarbone, and he whispered against it, words not meant for human tongues, a prayer and a curse entwined. Light seared the darkness. Emily's body arched, breath catching as a mark bloomed where his mouth had been, silver and gold, shifting like moonlight on water. The world stilled. Her heartbeat returned, faint but steady. Luke drew back, eyes glowing bright amber, chest heaving. The rain began again, soft and relentless. When she opened her eyes, they weren't the same. For a moment, her irises flashed with the same light as his, before fading back to blue. "What did you?" she started, voice barely a whisper. He looked wrecked. Beautiful but wrecked. "I didn't have a choice." Her fingers went to the mark. It pulsed faintly, warm against her touch. "What is this?" "Our bond," he said. "You were dying. The only way to bring you back was to give you part of me." "Part of you?" "My life," he said simply. "My soul." Silence filled the space between them, too heavy, too full. Then she saw it in his eyes, the fear not for himself, but for her. "You shouldn't have," she said, tears starting again. "If it puts you in danger. It's already done." He stood, turning away, trying to steady his breathing. The wolf in him was unsettled, restless under his skin. The bond tied them now, every heartbeat, every breath. He could feel her pain as his own. That night, when the wind rose, it wasn't just the forest whispering. It was something older, deeper, the magic of the bond itself, thrumming through the air like a song only they could hear. By morning, she was strong enough to walk. The wound had sealed, leaving only the faint shimmer of the mark. But Luke looked worse, pale, eyes hollow. "You took my pain," she realized aloud. He didn't deny it. The bond shares what it heals. She reached for his hand, but before she could speak, a shadow moved outside the window. A voice followed, low, formal and cold. "Alpha Hale." Carter stood there again, flanked by 2 council guards. Their silver insignias gleamed under the gray light. "You've crossed a line no one comes back from," he said. "You marked a human. The council knows." Luke's body went still. "They won't touch her." "They won't have to," Carter replied. "The decree's already written. By sunrise tomorrow, either you surrender your title, or both of you die." Emily's breath hitched. "What?" Carter's gaze softened for only a heartbeat. "You don't understand what he's done. That mark binds you to him, soul to soul. It's forbidden for a reason. No wolf survives it for long." Then he turned away, leaving the words to hang like smoke. Emily looked at Luke. "Is it true?" He didn't answer. The silence was enough. She stepped closer, voice breaking. "You saved me. And now you'll die for it." His hand came up, trembling, cupping her face. "If it means you live, then yes." Tears blurred her vision. "There has to be another way." "There might be," he said, though his tone was hollow. "If we can find the source of your mark. Whatever woke when I saved you, it's not just wolf magic. It's older, wilder. The council's afraid of it." Her pulse quickened. "You think I have power?" "I think," he said slowly, "you are power." Outside, thunder rumbled again, as if the heavens themselves had heard. Emily didn't know what scared her more, the thought of losing him, or the feeling that somewhere deep inside her, something ancient was starting to wake. And when Luke took her hand, their bond hummed like lightning caught in a heartbeat. The world had changed, and neither of them could go back. The night bled red long before the moon rose. Emily felt it in the air, a pulse in the earth itself, the world holding its breath before something ancient broke free. Luke stood at the tree line, shoulders squared, the wind combing through his hair like fingers of the storm. Behind them, Mason loaded the last of the silver bullets he swore he'd never use, muttering prayers under his breath. Scout was alive, shaken but unharmed, and now pressed against Emily's leg, eyes bright with recognition. Luke had found him at the edge of the river that morning, half-starved and trembling, the rogues already circling the ridge. They'd brought him home only to realize there was no more home to go back to. The packlands burned in the distance, smoke curling toward a crimson sky. "The council's coming," Luke said quietly. "So is Ronan." Emily swallowed hard. "Then we finish it tonight." He turned to her, eyes gold in the half-light. "If anything happens—" She cut him off. "Don't say it. I'm not losing you again." Lightning ripped the horizon, thunder answering like drums. The wolves arrived first, dozens of them, the pack loyal to Luke, fur bristling and eyes flashing like embers in the gloom. Then the rogues came, led by Ronan, his presence like poison in the air. His human form was half-shifted now, the monster inside him too strong to contain. "So this is where the great Alpha falls," Ronan sneered. Betrayed by his council, bound to a mortal, clinging to scraps of a crown he never deserved. Luke stepped forward, every movement deliberate. "You want the throne? Take it." Ronan's grin faltered. "You think surrender will save you? I think it'll end this." Emily felt it then, the hum under her skin, the mark burning faintly with the rhythm of her heartbeat. The wind bent around her as if listening. For days it had whispered to her, a language she couldn't understand until now. The moon was calling her name. Ronan lunged first, the air splitting with motion. Luke met him mid-stride, the two colliding in a flash of claws and teeth. The sound was thunder and fury, the ground trembling beneath them. Wolves clashed on every side, snarls and cries breaking through the storm. Emily ran toward the ridge, drawn by instinct she couldn't explain. The mark burned brighter, her pulse sinking with the moon's glow above. When she reached the clearing, she saw the old stones, ancient, carved with symbols that shimmered under the red light. Moon Seers. The words filled her head like memory, not thought. Women bound to the moon's will. Bridges between beasts and men. She dropped to her knees, pressing her hand to the stones. The world blurred, not gone, just shifted. She could feel the wolves, their rage, their hunger, their pain. It wasn't just Luke or Ronan, it was all of them, tangled in centuries of blood and fear. "Emily!" Luke's voice cut through the noise. He was fighting his way toward her, battered, half-shifted, eyes wild. "Whatever you're doing, stop. The council's watching." "I can end it," she said, her voice calm though her hands shook. "But it has to be me." Ronan broke through the circle, blood streaking his face, his grin feral. "End it? You think you can silence what you don't understand?" He charged. Emily rose, lifting her hand. The mark flared, light exploding from her palm like liquid moonfire. It struck him mid-stride, freezing him where he stood. His roar shook the ground, but the light only grew brighter, wrapping around him in tendrils of silver. Luke fell to his knees, shielding his eyes. "Emily!" She didn't answer. She couldn't. The power was pouring through her now, too vast, too alive. Her voice was not her own when she spoke. "You were born of the moon's breath," she whispered, "and by her light you will be still." Ronan's howl turned to silence. The light swallowed him whole, then faded, leaving only smoke and the faint scent of rain. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then Luke crawled toward her, reaching out. She was still standing, but her body swayed as if the wind itself could break her. "Emily," he breathed, catching her before she fell. Her skin was cold, her heartbeat faint. "Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open. Did it work? He looked past her, the wolves around them no longer fighting, heads bowed low as the first rays of dawn cut through the red clouds. The storm had gone. The silence was peace, not fear. "It's over," he said. A faint smile touched her lips. Good. Then her eyes rolled back and she went limp in his arms. No, 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 he whispered, pulling her close. The mark on her chest pulsed once, weakly, then began to fade. Desperation clawed at him. You can't leave me, not now. He pressed his forehead to hers, closing his eyes. The bond between them hummed, faint, fading, and then something deeper answered. The moon above them, full and bright again, shone through the thinning clouds. Her breath returned like a sigh. When she opened her eyes, the mark burned softly again, steady now. Luke laughed, a broken, relieved sound. You came back. I followed the light, she murmured. It led me here. He didn't speak. He only held her, his face buried in her hair, the tremor in his shoulders saying everything words couldn't. By sunrise, the council arrived. Carter was among them, his expression unreadable as he took in the bodies, the smoke, the still kneeling wolves. Ronan's gone, Luke said, voice steady. The war's over. Carter's eyes flicked to Emily, to the glowing mark. At what cost? My crown, Luke replied. And my choice. He turned then, facing his pack. You're free. The old laws die with me. Carter's voice was rough when he finally spoke. You know what exile means. Luke nodded. I do. The council didn't stop him. Maybe they couldn't. The forest was still too full of ghosts. By the time the last embers faded, Emily and Luke were already walking away, Scout tucked against her chest, his small heartbeat steady against hers. The forest behind them smoldered, the scent of ash and rain mingling in the morning air. Neither spoke until the sun broke over the horizon. What happens now? She asked softly. Luke looked at her, tired, scarred, but lighter somehow. Now we live. She smiled, tears bright in her eyes. Together. He nodded. Always. As they reached the ridge, the light caught the mark on her skin, faint but glowing, a reminder of the night she died and was reborn in moonfire. Luke touched it gently, reverently. It'll fade one day, she said. He shook his head. Not this. Not us. Behind them, the wolves howled one last time, not in mourning but in farewell. The sound rose and fell with the dawn, echoing across the valley like a promise. When it finally faded, all that remained was the whisper of the wind and the quiet rhythm of two hearts, beating as one. The Alpha King was gone. The Moon Seer walked beside him. And somewhere in the growing light, the mark shimmered, proof that love, once bound by the moon, was never meant to end.